A young couple become the victims of a terrifying assault.
This crime scene was one of the bloodiest that I've ever seen.
I could see a slash across his throat.
She had several lacerations to her hands, as well as to her abdomen.
For law enforcement, one of their biggest priorities was to figure out who would want to do this to either of them.
The evidence seems to point to a jealous stalker.
She had mentioned that a guy named John with dreads had followed her.
He would pop up like in crazy places.
But as the investigation unfolds, detectives begin to question everything about the case.
This trail of blood led to the kitchen.
There was 2 knives missing.
How did the suspect know exactly where to go to get the knife?
It did not make sense to me.
The math just was not mathing. Detectives are starting to believe that John really didn't exist.
January 17th, 2010. It's 3:30 a.m. in Shreveport, Louisiana, when police receive an emergency call from 24-year-old Kimethia-Coleman.
Shreveport police, what's your emergency?
Somebody's trying to kill my boyfriend.
Oh, I gotta kill your boyfriend?
Oh, yes!
She's saying that her boyfriend, Brian Spinks, they both have been attacked. This person ran out of the apartment, and she doesn't know where he is.
Help me, please. I took the knife out of him. Help me, please.
Okay, he was stabbed?
Help me.
Minutes later, officers arrive at the address, where they find 29-year-old Brian Spinks lying motionless by the door.
I could see stab wounds about the head. I could see a slash across his throat. There was a great amount of blood to where when you step into the living room, you could hear the sound of liquid in the carpet.
They were able to quickly establish that Brian was dead.
Kim is screaming hysterically, and she's yelling, "Why would he do this?"
The officers secure the scene and escort Kimethia out of the apartment. They try to calm her down so she can explain what happened.
Kimethia appeared to be in a state of shock. She was covered head to toe in blood, and she was very distraught.
When they asked her who did this, she described a man with dreadlocks in a red shirt. She said he left. She didn't know which direction he went.
It's normal for a victim or someone who sees a traumatic event not to be able to divulge what occurred right then. She was also injured, so we had to get her treatment and take her to the hospital.
She had several lacerations to her hands, as well as to her abdomen and her leg.
As Kimethia is transported to a hospital, homicide detectives arrive to take over the investigation. Before entering the apartment, they speak with 2 potential witnesses.
The initial responding officers had located a vehicle at the apartment complex. The vehicle was stopped, and the individuals were contacted and found out to be friends of Miss Kimethia-Coleman.
They were with her earlier in the day. They had arrived at the apartment to check on her when she didn't answer her phone. Whenever we interview witnesses, we want to find out anything we can, whatever they know. What type of relationship they have with the victim, what knowledge they have prior to the events that occurred.
For law enforcement, one of their biggest priorities was to figure out who was Brian Spinks, who was Kimethia-Coleman, And who would want to hurt them? Who would want to do this to either of them?
Brian Dennis Spinks was born December 15, 1980 in St. Louis, Missouri. He grew up in a family with a proud history of military service.
Brian was the second child, but the first boy. And subsequently, he had 2 younger brothers.
His father was in the military. Our mother, she was a DOD, Department of Defense employee for security assistance.
It goes all the way back to his great-grandfather being in the Korean War. My father and my grandfather were both in World War II. And then, of course, me in the Marine Corps.
After high school in 1999, Brian followed the family tradition and enlisted in the Air Force. But before he deployed, his life changed.
I met Brian Spinks, I want to say back in the summer of 2000. It was my senior year of high school. Brian had just joined the Air Force, and he had swung by the high school to help with all the recruiters. Brian was very attractive, and his smile was remarkable. We dated for about 6 months, and I found out I was pregnant with Amani.
In January 2001, Brian became a father, but the romance didn't last.
He, of course, military obligations, and I felt alone because the military had #1 priority.
He was going to do the full ride. Wouldn't have had a problem getting a job after the Air Force.
Shortly after Money was born, Brian was gone to Iraq. He took long tours.
He, did what the best he could and spoke to his son when he could, had the relationship with his son's mom. They co-parented.
It was very difficult, especially as Amani started getting older.
When we did spend time together in person, we had a good time. He made me feel loved. I cried when he left. But I understand what he was doing. He had to serve his country.
While stationed in Montgomery, he had a daughter with another woman in the Air Force.
Once she became pregnant, she got discharged from the Air Force and went home to, I think, Buffalo, New York. So that was difficult in itself. And Brian only got to see her a few times. They did the best he could from a distance.
But while on deployment, Brian's focus was on the men in his unit.
Brian and I met when I was in the Air Force back in 2002. He and I were both stationed at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana. He was kind of the organizer between all of us. We all just kind of meshed because this is the only family that we had. Our families were in different countries, different places, and he made sure that we had a place to come and congregate.
By the time he returned home in 2008, Brian was ready to focus on his family.
When he came home, it was always about Amani.
It was good, He talked, he checked on me. I ain't want for nothing.
At a friend's get-together later that year, Brian met someone new, a young woman named Kimethia-Coleman.
Kimethia-Coleman was from a small town about 30 minutes outside of Shreveport. Just about everyone who knew her loved her and liked her. She was very popular. Prom queen, homecoming queen, you name it.
Kimethia was a very sweet girl. I talked to her almost every Sunday, and she would always be in church.
Kimethia went on to go to Grambling State University. She chose a life of service as a social worker. She dedicated her life to serving and helping other people.
She was seemed like almost the perfect girl to introduce to your family and to settle down with. Brian had never been this serious about someone until Kimethia came along.
But little more than a year after they began dating, Brian has been killed by an unknown assailant. And investigators are now questioning 2 women outside the couple's apartment.
One was a longtime friend, the Kimethia-Colemans, and then the second individual was her sister. So the friend advises that she had been at the club with her sister and Miss Coleman downtown in Shreveport.
The women say Kimethia seemed upset that evening, and it had something to do with another man.
She had mentioned to the sisters that a guy named John with dreads had followed her. One of the sisters said that she did see someone at the club with dreads, but a lot of black males at that time wore dreads, and so nothing stood out to her.
They say Brian was also at the club, but neither he nor Kimethia stayed for long.
There's a brief conversation between the two, and Brian leaves. Then the friends notice, minutes later, Kimethia leaves.
And within a few minutes of Kimethia leaving, they left to see if Kimethia's car was still there, and they didn't see it. So they went to Brian's to make sure she got where she was going. When they got there, they heard the screaming, and they saw the police coming, and they knew something was terribly wrong.
To detectives, the women appeared genuine in their account of the evening. So the investigation is just beginning.
We didn't have enough to go on, so we needed to speak with Kimethia to find out who is John and get more information on why he followed her to Brian's apartment.
Coming up, evidence reveals the brutality of the attack.
The fact that the knife was broken is indicative of a very powerful or angry strike.
And detectives speak with Kimethia.
No, Lord. You gotta tell me they come back from the kitchen.
After speaking with Kimethia-Coleman's friends about the events leading up to the fatal stabbing of Brian Spinks, investigators turn their attention to the crime scene.
Police are not able to talk to Kim. Her wounds are being tended to, and they're hoping that the scene could give them the answers to this puzzle.
This crime scene was one of the bloodiest that I've ever seen. They observed what they thought to be at least 30 wounds to Brian. The cut from his neck, which almost had decapitated Brian, was what the lethal blow was. The amount of blood in the apartment and the amount of injuries that Brian sustained is indicative of a person with a lot of rage or anger. They have some reason to be mad enough to do that kind of damage and that much damage to another individual.
The murder weapons, a pair of knives found near Brian's body, seem to confirm their assessment.
There was a knife that was intact. There was also another knife that was close by that was a handle, and the blade was located in another part of the living room. The fact that the knife was broken is indicative of a very powerful or angry strike.
This trail of blood led to the kitchen, and they notice that on the kitchen counter is this knife block.
There was 2 knives missing from the knife block that also match the knives that were laying next to Brian Spinks' body.
And now they are able to kind of put the pieces together that these 2 knives came off the kitchen counter.
We did search the front door to see any type of jarring or kick marks or pry marks or anything, and none were located.
They start wondering, how did he get in? Did someone leave a door unlocked?
Police canvassed the apartment complex, but none of the neighbors they speak to saw what happened. That leaves one person who might be able to identify the killer, and she's in the hospital.
Police now find that Kimethia's wounds are not life-threatening, so they are able to talk with her.
Kimethia was brought to the violent crimes office there at the Shreveport Police Department, roughly around 7 a.m.
Obviously, we all know why we're here. We're investigating the stabbing of Brian.
Is he okay?
We'll discuss all that. Will you talk to us?
Is Brian okay? It's always my mom.
He's dead.
His ass follow me.
Kimethia tells police that she was out on the town. It was a girls' night out.
They went to a couple of different establishments, had a few drinks, and then they ended up at Gigi's. Gigi's is one of the larger clubs in downtown Shreveport. Not long after they got to Gigi's, they saw Brian.
Tell me about that.
We talked and he got upset and he left.
Kimethia advised us that whenever her and Brian went out separately, that they weren't supposed to meet up at the same club or go to the same places.
They had an agreement that if one comes to the club, the other one has to leave. So Brian leaves.
She said that she decided to go back to Brian's apartment to make sure that everything was cool.
Kimethia advised us that her and Brian were back at his apartment. They were kind of talking.
All of a sudden, and he stabs Brian. He has like 2 or 3 times. And all I do, I know I hit him a couple of times.
She said she tried to jump on him, and he pushed her back. After he finished stabbing Brian, he just gets up and runs off.
You keep saying ass. Who is the ass?
Kimethia explains that John was a man she'd dated casually in the past, and he seemed to have gotten the wrong idea.
I mean, I told him there would never be anything because I was with him, I was with Brian. And I mean, after a couple of months, he got the picture, but then he showed back up. He would pop up like in crazy places.
Kimethia stated she saw him at the library. She also saw him near her apartment and later saw him at the club with her friends.
Despite the alarming run-ins with this man over the past month, Kimethia seems strangely unable to provide investigators with any details.
She could never tell us a phone number, or she couldn't even tell us his last name. She stated that he drives different cars and he will call her from different payphones.
And the fact that she can't give us specific information about this John had us starting to question exactly what she was telling us.
Police realized that she could still be in shock. So they decided to go to the cell phones.
They asked Kimethia for permission to go through her cell phone.
There are 3 voicemails on her phone. 2 of them are from friends talking about going out that night and making plans for the night. And then that 3rd voicemail is from Brian.
He left the voicemail in between the time he left the club and the time that she arrived at his apartment. He advised that he was done, he was breaking up with her. Prior to us hearing that, it appeared that her and Brian's relationship was fine.
As the detectives confront her with this voicemail, she changes. Her demeanor changes.
Hey, Kim. Why did he break up with you, huh?
He didn't break up with me tonight. We always go through this. It's not a big deal.
Officer just left him at the morgue. So yeah, it's a big deal. It's a very big deal.
"4 hours after Brian Spinks was found stabbed to death in his apartment. Investigators have just heard a voicemail from that same night in which he broke up with his girlfriend, Kimethia-Coleman. The new information has them questioning if her story of a violent home invasion by a jealous stalker is true.
At that point, she asks to speak to Detective Farquhar alone. They had developed a bit of a rapport, and she trusted him in a way that she hadn't developed trust with the other detectives.
We step outside into a little room to where we can still watch Kimethia and Detective Farquhar in their interview, but Kimethia can't see us.
I was hoping that she would finally confide in me exactly what happened.
What did you say tonight, girls? Don't be embarrassed, okay? It's just me. They're out of here.
At that point, she started telling me that Brian had, in the past, as well as that night, has hit her and abused her, but she felt that she deserved it, and so she didn't say anything to anyone.
Kimethia stated that they argued in Brian's apartment, that he'd been drinking, he was drunk, and she stated that he grabbed her by the hand, causing a minor bruise, and then Brian grabbed her throat, strangling her.
She said she pushed him off, and that's when he went into the kitchen and got a knife.
I know it's hard. You gotta tell me if he comes back from the kitchen.
According to Kimethia, he begins to stab her about the legs and stomach area.
She said she had to do something in order to defend herself in that moment.
So she, at that point, got up, went into the kitchen, got her own knife.
And I was like, I don't do something without killing me.
So he just kept stabbing. When did his throat get cut? But it was cut bad.
The guy he called me too.
Sean did?
Mm-hmm.
Was he in the apartment where all this happened?
Yes, he called me, and I was like, I was like, what are you doing there?
She's changing the story now. It has now gone from John breaking into the apartment and attacking Brian to John walking into the apartment as she and Brian were fighting.
It kind of confused her story. The fact that she brought John back in did not make sense to me.
So he showed up in the middle of y'all fighting?
Mm-hmm.
And what all did he do?
He got the knife and just started jabbing her. I guess he was trying to make it look like I did.
It made no sense to anyone in that room. Like, the math just was not mathing. At this point, detectives are starting to believe that John really didn't exist. The question that the detectives asked was, why didn't you just leave? You're being attacked, you're able to get away, but instead of leaving, you grab a weapon and you come back to the fight.
I was trying to protect myself. I was trying to talk to him, tell him to calm down. I'm like, okay, are you really gonna do this right now?
At that point, I advised Detective Holmes and Agent Dunkel to come back in. I asked Kimethia to repeat what she had told me to them. At that point, she advised for an attorney. So the interview was concluded.
Since it appears the stabbing was a crime of passion, police charge Kimethia-Coleman with manslaughter. Under Louisiana state law, they have 72 hours to gather any additional evidence.
Within the 72-hour period, a detective would gather all the pertinent information to corroborate the charge or upgrade it to second-degree murder. And with that being said, they would gather more evidence, talk to more witnesses, talking to anybody that knew her or Brian Spinks and their relationship.
Coming up, witnesses provide troubling new details about events leading up to the murder.
She threatened to beat his ass there at the club.
And medical analysis casts doubt on Kimethia's story.
The coroner identified 64 stab wounds.
It's hard for me to fathom this incident being self-defense.
It's been nearly 12 hours since Brian Spinks' murder, and loved ones have started to learn the tragic news.
I just had randomly come in to my mom's house, and she hung up the phone and she screamed my name, and it was just something about the way she screamed it. And she told me the news that Brian was killed. Just in shock.
With Kimethia-Coleman in custody, detectives turn their attention to locating the alleged stalker she continues to claim murdered her boyfriend.
Now that Kimethia's story is not making much sense, it's very important for police to rule out the John theory. Police did locate a person that fit John's description. He said he didn't know Kimethia and he didn't know Brian. They weren't able to find any type of evidence on him, no blood, no knife wounds.
With the suspect having to be so close to the victim, it would have been nearly impossible for the person to not have some kind of evidence transfer from the victim to their person.
Blood is very slippery, and when someone is stabbing someone, generally the knife will slip and they will cut themselves during the event. This gentleman that was stopped had no injuries whatsoever on him.
It was very clear, this is not John.
Not only are investigators unable to find John, there is no evidence he exists at all.
Surveillance cameras were captured from Gigi's. There was no black male with dreadlocks with a red shirt that was walking around Gigi's, stalking her.
We were unable to locate any witnesses that saw this guy, John, or any video to corroborate Kimethia's statement that she saw him at the club or that she saw him at the library.
It became apparent to police that Kimethia had literally sent them on a goose chase to find another suspect that was non-existent.
The discovery means there were only 2 people in the apartment when the stabbing occurred: Brian and Kimethia.
She stabbed him in a rage. There was no John in the picture whatsoever. But it is better for detectives to still go a little bit further to get more evidence, talk to her family, talk to friends.
I did receive a phone call from Brian's father, and he advised that Brian, within the past couple of weeks, was getting ready to part ways with Kimethia.
His description to me was, "Dad, I'm being smothered." He told me, wasn't seeing any other girls, just her. But she was smothering him. And He needed some time away.
She had been pressuring him about marriage, and he didn't feel like he was ready for that.
She was getting up at night, going in his phone, going in his emails, searching the house, going through the drawers, looking for some type of incriminating evidence that he's dating another girl. It progressively got worse, the jealousness and the insecurities.
Brian's loved ones say the tension between him and Kimethia finally reached a breaking point on the night of January 17th.
Air Force OSI detectives interviewed the Brian Spinks friends who went out with him that night. They state that Brian was at Gigi's dancing with a friend, but not intimately or anything of that nature, just a friendly dance with another female. Kimethia sees Brian dancing with this female. She gets enraged and figures this must be a side piece, and they argue.
She threatened to beat his ass there at the club for dancing with someone else.
That night, I saw a different side of Kim that I had never seen before. I had never seen her react this way. Eventually, cooler heads prevailed, and we sat down with Kim. She said to me, she was like, Shane, I'm sorry. I love him, and, I overreacted. So, and in my mind, the night was over, and everything was fine. I had no idea what happened after that until the next morning.
Through all the interviews that we did, we feel that Kimethia was jealous, and that when Brian tried to break it off with her, that just made her lose her mind. And that if she couldn't have him, no one could.
Police in Shreveport, Louisiana have arrested Kimethia-Coleman for stabbing her boyfriend Brian Spinks to death. But Kimethia insists she was acting in self-defense.
Being that there was accusation of abuse, we pulled up any type of police records, but there were no records between Brian Spinks or Kimethia.
Investigators look to Brian's autopsy to provide definitive answers.
Once the coroner got him down to the morgue and they conducted the autopsy, they identified 64 stab wounds.
When somebody's trying to defend themselves from an attacker, they are trying to de-escalate the situation, trying to put a little distance between them and their attacker just to stop the incident from occurring. It's hard for me to fathom this incident being self-defense.
Detectives are left with, how is it that this 100-pound female was able to overtake this 5'11", muscle-bound male who's in the military?
When we got the autopsy report back, it showed that his blood alcohol level was over twice the legal limit, and that he probably would not have been able to fight back.
Her entire defense on the self-defense side was, he attacked me. There was no way that Brian, with the .174 blood alcohol content, attacked her, walked to the kitchen, came back, and stabbed her.
Kimethia's own injuries also seem to contradict her story.
She first claimed that John had stabbed her, and then she claimed that Brian had stabbed her during their fight in which she was defending herself.
But the Caddo Parish coroner said that they were not penetrating, that they were superficial wounds, which would lead him to believe that they were self-inflicted.
Maybe the murder was not premeditated, But she went to extreme lengths to create evidence, to create the optics that would support her story. She was desperate to stay out of trouble, so much so that she harmed herself.
On January 19, 2010, less than 72 hours after Brian's murder, prosecutors upgrade Kimethia's charges from manslaughter to second-degree murder.
Second-degree murder is the intentional killing of another person, whereas manslaughter is killing someone in the heat of the moment. The fact that she did 64 stab wounds to him as well as a severe laceration to his throat was more indicative that she meant to kill him.
The behavior they said she displayed wasn't the Kim I know, wasn't the Kim I've talked to. I couldn't believe the viciousness.
A trial date is set, but as her day in court approaches, Kimethia's attorneys introduce a new strategy for her defense.
She pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. There were motions filed, there was a mental evaluation conducted, and she was deemed incompetent to stand trial. She was transferred to a mental health facility for 90 days. At the end of that 90 days, she had a second evaluation.
November 2011, it was determined that Kimethia-Coleman was able to stand trial and testify.
On April 23, 2012, Kimethia-Coleman's murder trial begins. Despite the results of her psychiatric evaluation, her defense remains the same.
Battered wife syndrome was one of the elements of her insanity defense, that she was beaten enough and that she was abused and endured so much abuse that one day she just couldn't take anymore and she fought back.
The defense tried to paint Brian as an abusive person and tried to claim that he had PTSD because he had served in the Middle East and that he came back and took all of that out on Kimethia.
For prosecutors, the question is whether the jury will believe it.
Only two people know what really occurred during the relationship, and one of them is no longer here to tell their story.
At her murder trial, Kimethia-Coleman claims the abuse she suffered at the hands of her boyfriend, Brian Spinks, drove her to commit a desperate act of self-preservation. Police and prosecutors say otherwise.
Throughout the investigation and throughout the preparation for the trial, there was just no evidence that pointed to Brian being an abusive person.
She was saying that he beat on women and he beat on me. Brian wouldn't hit a fly.
Kimethia-Coleman is a disturbed female who could not take no from her boyfriend, who did not want to be with her anymore. That's what made her snap.
Prosecutors present Kimethia's 911 call as definitive proof her actions were premeditated.
I went back and listened to that phone call. You can hear Brian in the background. She gets real loud and kind of screams. And if you listen closely, you can hear Brian start to gurgle.
Okay, what's going on there?
I think that is when she delivered the final blow while she was on the phone with 911.
Hearing his voice one last time, crying for help. was truly gut-wrenching.
I can't imagine a human being doing what she did to somebody. What she did was... That man didn't deserve to leave like that.
Who would have thought? A sweet young lady with a future, a loving family. Who would believe she would do such a horrendous crime? I just couldn't believe it. And she turned into another person that night, as if she was possessed.
The jury in this trial deliberated 2 hours, and they came back with a unanimous guilty as charged verdict of second-degree murder.
Kimethia-Coleman is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
She will not spend another day in freedom. She'll be locked up, but that still doesn't help his friends and family.
We was trying to plan Amani a big surprise birthday party because it was going to be the first time Brian was in the U.S. when his birthday hit.
She took that from me. Man, that was supposed to be my guide through life, you know? Like, she took that, and I can't get that back.
I believe Brian would be extremely proud of his son, of the man that he has become.
I wasn't completely stripped because I got a grandson that reminds me of every time I look at him and talk to him. His same voice. Brian still is.
We respect what he did in the service, the sacrifice that he made. Great father, willing to do anything for the kids, even though it's from afar.
I still feel his spirit around me. He was a good person, you know? No matter what happened, you know, even how he died, that ain't who he was. My father wasn't abusive. He took care of his kids. I just want people to know that my father was a good man.
The graphic details of their passing need not be dwelt upon. What matters is the immense sorrow of a family violently torn apart, and the haunting question of who could commit such a cold and calculated act against two innocent elders. The unraveling thread of evidence. For 3 long years, the case remained unsolved. Investigators interviewed 50 to 60 people, but the genetic material found on a discarded herbal cigarette at the crime scene matched no known offenders in a national database. However, truth possesses a quiet resilience. In the year 2015, a young man named Willie Guillory, who had been 16 years old at the time of the crime, committed a felony offense involving the theft of a horse. Because he was now an adult, his genetic profile was entered into the national system, triggering a match with the evidence left in Arlington. Upon questioning, Willie broke down. His confession revealed a tragic sublayer to this narrative, the exploitation of impoverished youth. Willie had been brought to the scene by his 52-year-old uncle, Bobby Guillory. Bobby, a man with no prior criminal record, had been facing severe financial hardship and homelessness. Daphne Wright had preyed upon Bobby's desperation, offering him $10,000 to carry out the devastating act. Bobby and Willie were the desperate hands, but Daphne was the absolute architect of the tragedy, the ultimate betrayal. The most chilling psychological revelation, however, emerged when investigators asked how the perpetrators accessed the locked apartment. The answer shattered the facade of the grieving family. Chow Tran, the son-in-law, had provided the key. The inner world of Chow Tran is perhaps the darkest element of this story. Faced with a failing business and immense pressure from Daphne Wright, Chow made an incomprehensible choice. Instead of protecting his family, he prioritized the collection of an $850,000 insurance payout to secure his own financial survival. He facilitated the demise of the very people who had trusted him to lead their family business. His actions reflect a total collapse of moral integrity, illustrating the terrifying depths a human mind can reach when consumed by cowardice and greed. To secure a conviction against the mastermind, Daphne Wright, prosecutors were forced to offer Chow Tran immunity in exchange for his testimony. In the courtroom, Chow attempted to portray himself as a victim of mind control, claiming his mother-in-law had willingly offered herself as a sacrifice to pay the debt, a claim investigators found utterly absurd. Justice and enduring need for balance. In September of the year 2019, Daphne Wright was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to spend the rest of her life in prison. Bobby and Willie Guillory also faced justice for their roles in the violence. However, the community is left grappling with the unsettling reality that Chow Tran, having received the insurance money, remains free from prosecution due to his immunity agreement. As we reflect on this profound tragedy, we must hold fast to the enduring strength of the community left behind. True resilience is not found in the endless, frantic accumulation of wealth, nor in the desperate reliance on predatory mysticism. It is found in our solidarity, in our willingness to support one another through hardship, and in maintaining a balanced, rational approach to life's inevitable challenges. May the memory of Long Nguyen and Hong Lee serve as a poignant reminder to cherish our families, protect the vulnerable, and always seek the light of truth and moderation over the dark abyss of greed. The fabric of any strong community is woven with threads of trust, mutual support, and a shared pursuit of a balanced, peaceful life. When an endearing elderly couple is found tragically taken from this world in their own home, it sends a profound shockwave not just through their immediate family, but through the entire community. As a society that deeply values harmony, resilience, and the quiet dignity of a life well lived, we must look at such events not merely as crimes, but as profound human tragedies that warn us of the dark paths forged by greed and desperation. This is the story of Long Nguyen and Hong Lee, two hard-working immigrants whose quest for prosperity ultimately clashed with devastating exploitation of their deepest beliefs. It is a narrative that asks us to reflect on the importance of knowing when enough is enough, and the dangers of losing our spiritual equilibrium, the pursuit of prosperity and the loss of equilibrium. In the year 2000, Long Nguyen and Hong Lee left Vietnam for the United States, carrying with them the time-honored traditions of their homeland. They settled in Arlington, Texas, a city known for its diverse and vibrant cultural tapestry, including a robust Vietnamese community that had been steadily growing since 1975. They sought what so many seek, a stable foundation for their 3 children and their grandchildren. For nearly a decade, the couple embodied the virtues of diligence and community spirit. They established a commercial sewing business, enlisting their son-in-law, Chow Tran, to bridge the language gap and manage contracts. Their dedication bore fruit, securing lucrative agreements with major commercial entities. However, as is often the nature of unchecked ambition, the winds of fortune shifted. By 2011, they had lost their major contracts, and the business began to decline. In times of hardship, a grounded spirit seeks pragmatic solutions and leans on the support of the community. But driven by the immense pressure of maintaining their financial status and deeply rooted in a traditional mysticism, the family sought a different path. They believed their misfortune was a result of a spiritual curse. This departure from rational balance and acceptance led them into the hands of a Houston-based spiritual advisor named Daphne Wright. The psychology of desperation and exploitation, the psychological dynamic between the victims and the perpetrator, reveals a tragic vulnerability. Hong Lee and Long Nguyen, desperate to restore their family's legacy, placed their absolute faith in Wright, a woman who advertised her ability to remove dark curses and conjure good fortune. Instead of finding a guiding light, they were pulled into a vortex of manipulation. Wright preyed upon their cultural beliefs and their escalating panic. The family poured their resources into her rituals, running up an astonishing debt estimated between $250,000 and $280,000. The psychological toll on the elderly couple must have been immense, trapped between a failing business and an ever-growing financial obligation to a woman they believed held their spiritual fate in her hands. Daphne Wright's internal landscape, as revealed through the investigation, was one devoid of empathy and consumed by material greed. She operated as a spiritual loan shark. When the family could no longer pay, she did not offer grace or counsel. She demanded their lives. Learning of substantial life insurance policies totaling $850,000, Wright saw an opportunity to extract her payment through the ultimate disruption of human life, the shattered peace of a June morning. On the 10th of June, 2012, the Arlington police were called to perform a welfare check at the couple's apartment. What seasoned officers discovered was a scene that deeply rattled their hardened resolve. The home had been staged to look like a random burglary gone wrong, complete with a blue bandana and a marijuana cigarette meant to mimic local gang activity. Tragically, Long and Hong were found lifeless, their bodies restrained with duct tape. The extreme nature of the incident pointed away from a simple robbery and toward a deeply personal, targeted attack. For a community that cherished these elders as sweet, generous, and hard-working people who bothered no one, the grief was immeasurable, a cold case warmed by truth. For over 3 years, the investigation yielded no answers, leaving a heavy cloud over the community. But truth, much like nature, has a way of eventually asserting its balance. In 2015, a breakthrough occurred. A DNA match from the staged crime scene pointed to Willie Guillory, who had been a 16-year-old minor at the time of the incident. Upon questioning, the young man broke down, his conscience burdened by the weight of the past. He confessed to being present, manipulated by his uncle, Bobby Guillory, a man who had been financially destitute and desperate for the $10,000 promised by Daphne Wright for carrying out the devastating act. Bobby Guillory's involvement highlights another tragic psychological facet of this case: how poverty and desperation can be weaponized by those with malicious intent. Yet, Bobby's confession revealed a twist far darker than a simple murder-for-hire plot, the ultimate betrayal and the scales of justice. Bobby claimed that the key to the apartment was provided by none other than Chow Tran, the victim's own son-in-law. The psychological profile of Chow Tran presents a chilling contradiction. Outwardly, the grieving family spokesman, investigators discovered he had purchased a new home shortly after his in-laws' passing, fueled by the insurance payout. To secure a conviction against the mastermind, Daphne Wright, prosecutors made the difficult decision to offer Chow Tran immunity in exchange for his testimony. During the trial in 2019, Chow testified that the family was completely terrorized by Wright's supposed mystical powers, even making the highly contested claim that his mother-in-law was willing to sacrifice herself to pay the debt, while the jury saw through Daphne Wright's manipulations, sentencing her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The resolution leaves a lingering sense of moral imbalance. Chow Tran walked free, leaving investigators and the public grappling with a profound betrayal of family trust. Finding light in the shadow, this narrative, while steeped in sorrow, serves as a vital reminder of the values that protect us. It warns against the unchecked desire for wealth and the abandonment of reason in the face of adversity. The true heritage we must pass on is not one of material wealth, but of emotional resilience, rational balance, and unwavering support for one another. As we reflect on the lives of Long Nguyen and Hong Lee, let us remember them not for the tragic way they departed, but as a cautionary tale that underscores the necessity of Samkite, finding contentment in what we have, and the enduring strength found only in genuine, compassionate human connection. The light of community is sustained not by seeking mystical fortunes, but by holding on to our shared humanity, especially in the darkest of times. The illusion of fortune and the cost of betrayal, a portrait of a community shaken but resilient. In the heart of Texas, a narrative of hope recently transformed into a profound human tragedy. A story that resonates deeply with anyone who understands the sacred value of family, heritage, and the enduring search for a harmonious life. As observers from a culture that deeply values social solidarity, the preservation of one's cultural roots, and the essential principle of moderation, knowing when one has enough, we find this event to be a stark reflection on the destructive power of unchecked avarice. It is a cautionary tale that explores the darkest corners of human desperation, yet it also calls upon us to honor the resilience of a community that continues to seek light amidst unimaginable sorrow. In the year 2000, Long Nguyen and Hong Lee, a devoted couple in their 70s, embarked on a journey that mirrored the aspirations of countless immigrants. They carried with them from Vietnam not just their belongings, but the rich, time-honored traditions of their ancestors. Settling in Arlington, they sought to build a quiet, industrious life, laying a foundation for their 3 children and future generations. They established a modest commercial sewing business, working tirelessly to integrate into their new environment while holding fast to their cultural identity. For over a decade, their lives exemplified a beautiful balance, a quiet dignity built on honest labor, mutual respect, and a deep, abiding love for their family. They were the very essence of good neighbors, individuals who never caused strife and who were universally cherished by those who knew them. However, the natural order of their lives was violently disrupted on the morning of June 10th, 2012. Emergency dispatchers received a call from their 38-year-old son-in-law, Chow Tran, requesting a welfare check. When seasoned police officers arrived at the apartment, they were met with a scene that shattered the morning peace. The elderly couple was found deceased in their bedroom closet, having suffered fatal injuries and suffocation. The sheer brutality of the scene left even veteran investigators, some with over 21 years of experience, in a state of profound shock. The sanctity of the home had been violated in the most grievous manner possible. To understand the genesis of this tragedy, one must delve deeply into the psychology of both the victims and those who orchestrated their demise. The psychological landscape of Long and Hong was one of vulnerability born from a sudden loss of stability. After losing a significant commercial contract, their business began to fail, faced with the collapse of their life's work, and driven by an earnest desire to protect their family's future. They turned to the ancient mysticism of their homeland. They sought out a spiritual advisor, hoping to restore balance and harmony to their lives. This was not a pursuit of extravagant wealth, but a desperate yearning to mend the tear in their livelihood, an instinct deeply understood by anyone who values the security of the family hearth. Tragically, this vulnerability was met by the predatory opportunism of Daphne Wright, a 44-year-old spiritual advisor based 250 miles away in Houston. A psychological analysis of Wright reveals a mind entirely consumed by greed and manipulation. She operated as a spiritual extortionist, exploiting the deep-seated cultural beliefs and fears of her clients. Wright demanded exorbitant fees, transforming a spiritual sanctuary into a prison of debt. When the couple's debts ballooned to between $250,000 and $280,000, Wright's demands turned lethal. Her internal world was a void devoid of empathy, characterized by a complete detachment from the moral imperatives of community and human sanctity. Yet, the most profound psychological collapse occurred within their own family. Chow Tran, the son-in-law who served as the English-speaking face of the family business, became the crucial link in this fatal chain, navigating between the traditional values of his in-laws and the relentless pressures of commerce. Tran succumbed to a staggering moral failure. Confronted with mounting debts and the terrifying threats of their spiritual advisor, his internal compass shattered. It was revealed that Tran and his wife were the beneficiaries of substantial life insurance policies, reportedly totaling $850,000. The investigation uncovered a chilling betrayal. Tran provided the keys to the family home, effectively sacrificing the very people who had trusted him implicitly. His actions represent the ultimate tragic surrender to material obsession, a devastating departure from the protective duties owed to family. The execution of this grim plot was carried out by individuals existing on the margins of society, driven by their own desperate circumstances. Bobby Guillory, a 52-year-old man struggling with severe unemployment and poverty, was promised $10,000 by right to carry out the act. Driven by the fear of homelessness, Guillory agreed, bringing along his 16-year-old nephew. Willie, the involvement of a juvenile highlights the tragic cycle of exploitation, where the vulnerable are coerced into committing acts of unthinkable harm. They attempted to stage the scene as a random act of gang violence, leaving behind deceptive evidence, including a discarded marijuana cigarette. For 3 years, the case remained unresolved, casting a long shadow of grief over the local community. But justice, though delayed, possesses a persistent memory. In October 2015, following a separate legal infraction, genetic evidence collected from the younger Guillory matched the material left at the scene. This breakthrough unraveled the entire conspiracy. Both men confessed, pointing directly to Daphne Wright as the architect of the scheme and exposing child trans complicity in providing access to the home. In August 2019, the judicial system rendered its verdict. Daphne Wright was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. However, the resolution remains imperfect. To secure the conviction against the mastermind, prosecutors were forced to grant child trans immunity in exchange for his testimony. The reality that a man who facilitated the demise of his own family remains free continues to weigh heavily on the investigators and the community alike. Despite the darkness of this narrative, the true essence of this story must remain focused on Long Nguyen and Hong Lee. Their lives should not be defined by their final moments, but by the decades of warmth, diligence, and love they shared with their community. The local society, though deeply wounded, has shown remarkable resilience and solidarity, drawing together to mourn and to remember the genuine values the couple stood for. Their tragedy serves as a solemn educational reminder of the dangers of exploitation and the vital importance of protecting the vulnerable among us. In remembering them, we reaffirm our commitment to a society built on mutual care, the preservation of our shared humanity, and a life lived in gentle harmony. Explained that she had not seen her roommate since the previous night, and that Pamela had not come home. At first, Paul tried to remain calm and positive, thinking perhaps his daughter was just spending extra time with friends. But when Monday arrived and Pamela failed to show up for her shift at the restaurant, a deep, parental worry settled into his heart. Pamela was simply not the kind of person to disappear without leaving a note or making a call. She was responsible and deeply connected to her loved ones. Realizing that something was very wrong, Paul immediately contacted the local police department to ask for their help. The community rallied together with incredible speed. For 13 long days, the town of Prescott held its breath, hoping for a happy resolution. But on the evening of the 29th of September, a local resident who had been enjoying a peaceful walk through the forest made a deeply saddening discovery near one of the area's many recreational fire pits. Authorities from the Yavapai County Sheriff Office responded swiftly to the area just outside the city limits. The scientific tools available to law enforcement back then were not as advanced as they are today, but they worked diligently with what they had. The medical examiner was able to use dental records to confirm the heartbreaking truth. Pamela had tragically lost her life. Out of profound respect for family, the authorities spared them the heavy details, confirming only that she had passed away. The news devastated Pamela's family. Paul found the loss nearly impossible to describe. It was heartbreaking and mind-boggling all at once. Through his immense grief, he tried to balance his emotions while desperately seeking answers. He needed to know what had happened to his beautiful daughter, and he trusted the dedicated investigators to uncover the truth. Chapter 3, Unraveling the Mystery. The Prescott Police Department and the Yavapai County Sheriff Office joined forces, combining their resources to solve the mystery. They knew that the first step in any investigation is to speak with the people closest to the person involved. During their conversations with Paul, investigators learned that Pamela and Shelley's friendship had recently experienced some turbulence. Paul revealed that the two young women had been having minor issues over household finances. Pamela had confided in her father that the rent was not getting paid on time and that she was feeling ready to move back home. Paul had welcomed the idea with open arms, completely supporting her decision. He had heard from other teenagers in town that Shelley could sometimes be untrustworthy and prone to delincuentes. Pamela had planned to tell Shelley about her decision to leave, but the tragic events unfolded before she could make her move. Investigators also found it curious that Pamela's car, her purse, and all her personal belongings had been left securely at the apartment. Shelley had not mentioned this crucial
A young
detail
couple become
Paul
the victims of a
when she
terrifying
first called
assault.
to report Pamela missing. On the 5th of October, detectives
crime
sat
scene
down
was
with
one of
Shelley
the
to hear her
bloodiest that I've ever-
perspective. Shelley painted a different picture, claiming that while living with Pamela was great at first, the financial bind over rent had caused some stress. When asked about her whereabouts on the night of the 16th of September, Shelley provided a long, complicated story. She claimed she finished work, met up with her boyfriend Ray Clerks, visited a local restaurant to see friends, and then went to another apartment to watch a movie. Sensing some inconsistencies, the detective spoke with Pamela's friend, Bobby Kitchener. Bobby calmly explained that he had spent the early evening with Pamela in town, talking with friends near the courthouse. He had gone to work around 9:30, and Pamela had told him she was just going to spend the rest of the evening relaxing at home. Bobby was cleared of any involvement, his timeline perfectly verified. The detectives then turned to Shelley's boyfriend, Ray. When asked to confirm Shelley's story, Ray admitted he could not be entirely sure of the timeline. He casually noted that he did not know exactly what Shelley did after 11:30 that night. When detectives pointed out that Shelley claimed to have gone home much later, Ray simply shrugged, unable to provide a solid answer. He eventually grew tired of the questions and asked to be left alone. As the police dug deeper into the social circles of town, they uncovered some troubling rumors. Friends of Shelley recalled that she had been visibly angry on the night of the 16th, actively looking for Pamela. Shelley had reportedly made dramatic, sweeping statements. Furthermore, some friends remembered Shelley making strange, overly dramatic comments in the past about how someone might hypothetically hide evidence if they were writing a mystery novel. Of course, the rumor mill of the small town went into overdrive. Some teenagers whispered wild, imaginative tales about secret societies and bizarre rituals in the forest. The rational detectives patiently listened to these stories, but quickly dismissed them as vivid imaginations of youth, confirming that there was absolutely no truth to such fantastical gossip. They remained focused on the facts. Chapter 4. Years of Patience and a Second Mystery. Despite the dedication of the investigators, finding concrete answers proved difficult. The location where Pamela was found offered very few clues. Months slowly turned into years. In the summer of 1989, investigators followed a lead regarding a minor disagreement Pamela had with an acquaintance named Melinda Perry. However, after thorough questioning and a brief legal misunderstanding, it became clear that Melinda had nothing to do with the tragedy and had simply been caught up in the confusion of the investigation. The case eventually grew cold, as investigations often do when leads dry up and there is no new information to analyze. Paul, however, never lost his grace or his hope. He maintained a steadfast belief in the justice system, telling the detectives that he was willing to wait as long as it took for the truth to be revealed. He wanted justice for his daughter, driven by love rather than revenge. Life in Prescott moved forward until the 25th of May, 1991, when the town was gently but firmly shaken by another mysterious event. A group of college students exploring the natural formations of the region made a somber discovery. Authorities were called, and they carefully recovered a young man who had unfortunately passed away. Through diligent work, the medical examiner identified the young man as Ray Clerks, Shelley Norgard's boyfriend. Ray had been reported missing by his family just a few days prior. He was a responsible young man with a bright future ahead of him. He had dreamed of becoming a commercial airline pilot, a passion that ran deep within his tightly knit family. He had been scheduled to attend a family wedding in California, and when he failed to arrive, his family immediately knew something was amiss. The detectives recognized a striking pattern. This was the second person very close to Shelley who had met a tragic end shortly after deciding to end their relationship with her. Ray's family confirmed that Ray had been planning to move back to California to pursue his aviation dreams, and he had intended to end his relationship with Shelley before he left. Shelley, it seemed, struggled deeply with the pain of rejection. Investigators carefully gathered evidence from the home Shelley and Ray had shared. They discovered definitive proof that Shelley was directly responsible for Ray's passing. With the evidence securely in hand, authorities arrested 21-year-old Shelley on the 4th of June, 1991. Eventually, Shelley accepted responsibility. She admitted to the court that when Ray told her he was leaving, her emotions completely overwhelmed her, leading to a tragic, irreversible action. She was sentenced to 20 years in the state prison. Pamela's family felt a mix of relief and frustration. They were thankful the streets were safer, but they secretly hoped this development would eventually bring answers regarding their beloved, Pamela. Yet, without direct evidence connecting Shelley to Pamela's case, the detectives' hands were tied. Chapter 5. The Voice of the Past. 18 long years passed. The town of Prescott continued to grow, but the memory of Pamela Pitts remained a gentle light in the hearts of those who loved her. The investigative file sat quietly on a shelf, waiting for the right moment. In March of 2011, 23 years after the initial investigation, the local police department assigned a dedicated cold case team to review the files. A diligent officer named Detective Dart took the lead. Initially, he was not told about Shelley's connection to the second case, allowing him to view the evidence with fresh, unbiased eyes. But as he meticulously read through the history, the realization struck him. He saw the timeline, the connections, and the undeniable pattern of Shelley's behavior. Shelley was nearing the end of her 20-year sentence. In February of 2011, investigators visited her. They did not raise their voices or demand answers. They simply had a calm conversation to remind her that Pamela's case was still open and that they were still searching for the truth. This strategic move was designed to see if Shelley would reach out to anyone and discuss the visit. For months, the police legally monitored her outgoing communications. Shelley made 97 phone calls before her release in May of 2011, but she carefully avoided saying anything incriminating. After her release, Shelley attempted to start a new chapter. She secured employment, met a man, got married, and changed her name to Shelley Norgard Harmon. She built a quiet life, assuming the past was entirely behind her. But Detective Dart was a man of immense patience and dedication. He knew that the truth has a way of echoing through time. The department faced delays due to heavy workloads and organizational changes, but the pursuit of justice never completely faded. In the spring of 2017, 6 years after Shelley had been released, Detective Dart decided to personally review the audio recordings of those 97 phone calls. One more time, he sat in his quiet office, listening intently to hours of mundane conversations. Then he heard it. It was a call Shelley had made to her father shortly after the detectives had visited her in prison. Her father had sounded deeply concerned, asking if they were going to be okay and discussing the need for legal representation. In a moment of vulnerability, her father had sighed and said that he had been thinking about the situation for 20 years, noting that Shelley had never actually told him the truth about what happened to Pamela. The silence on the recorded line that followed was profound. Shelley offered no denial, no reassurance, just a heavy, telling silence. For Detective Dart, that quiet moment, combined with the mountain of circumstantial evidence gathered over 3 decades, was a final puzzle piece needed. The authorities presented their findings, and they were granted the authority to act. On the 2nd of June, 2017, investigators approached Shelley. Detective Dart introduced himself and calmly stated that he wished to speak with her about the events of 1988. Seeing a look of quiet resignation wash over her face, he informed her that she was being held accountable for the loss of Pamela Pitts. Chapter 6, Healing and Closure. Securing a conviction after 30 years is a monumental task. The prosecutors face an uphill journey. Many individuals who had provided statements decades ago were no longer available, and human memory naturally fades with the passage of time. They knew bringing the case to a full trial would be extremely challenging. The legal team met with Paul and the rest of Pamela's family. They explained the delicate situation and presented a difficult option. The defense had offered an agreement. Shelley would finally take public responsibility for her actions, but due to the complex nature of the aging case and the time she had already served, she would not face additional years of confinement. Paul, displaying the remarkable grace and wisdom that had carried him through the decades, recognized that a confession was the ultimate prize, knowing that a trial might risk everything. The family chose a path that guaranteed the truth would be officially recorded. They chose closure over endless conflict. On the 1st of March, 2021, more than 30 years after Pamela's bright smile last graced the town, Shelley stood before a judge. She finally shared her version of events. She explained that she had gone out looking for Pamela on that fateful September night. When she found her, a heated argument ensued. Shelley admitted that she lost control of her emotions during the disagreement, leading to a physical altercation that ended in the tragic loss of Pamela's life. She confessed that fear took over, causing her to flee the scene and hide the truth for all those years. While the family suspected the whole truth might be even more complicated, hearing Shelley publicly admit her fault brought a profound sense of validation. The court accepted her statement. Due to the legal credits applied from her previous time served and her time awaiting this resolution, Shelley, now 50 years old, was released. Some might view the outcome as imperfect, but for the investigators and the family, it was a profound victory of perseverance. Detective Dart reflected on the moment he was finally able to sit down with Paul and deliver the news that an arrest had been made. He recalled shaking Paul's hand, sharing an emotional embrace, and feeling an incredible sense of professional and personal fulfillment. It was the crowning achievement of his career, a testament to the fact that dedicated public servants never give up on the people they are sworn to protect. Paul viewed the conclusion with a serene heart. While he naturally wished the legal consequences had been different, he chose to focus on the undeniable fact that justice had, in its own unique way, been served. The truth was out in the open. The burden of the unknown was finally lifted from his shoulders. The small town of Prescott could finally heal. The community learned valuable lessons about the importance of communication, the strength of familial love, and the incredible resilience of the human spirit. They remembered Ray Clerk's not for how he departed, but for his lofty dreams of touching the sky as a pilot, honoring the close family that nurtured his ambitions. Most importantly, Paul wanted the world to remember Pamela exactly as she was, a radiant young lady who loved life deeply and could not wait to embrace every beautiful opportunity it offered. Though her journey was far shorter than it should have been, the joy she brought to her siblings, her father, and her friends remained untarnished. Her story ultimately transformed from a mystery of sorrow into a lasting tribute to love, reminding everyone to cherish the present moment and to always be a guiding light for the people they hold dear. The Prescott National Forest provided the residents of Prescott, Arizona, with endless recreational activities. It was a sprawling beautiful expanse of nature where the scent of pine needles mingled with the crisp mountain air. Families would spend their weekends hiking the winding trails, and folks rode their dirt bikes out there, kicking up clouds of joyous dust. During the daytime, target shooters would set up their cans and bottles, practicing their aim in the peaceful seclusion of the woods. It was a community that thrived on the great outdoors, a place where everyone knew their neighbors and greeted them with warm, familiar smiles. In the heart of this vibrant town lived a young woman named Pamela Pitts, though everyone just called her Pam. At 19 years old, Pam was known throughout the town for her bright smile and an infectious zest for life. She was a wonderful kid, always doing something, always wanting to have fun. She possessed that rare, beautiful quality of being able to make friends with absolutely anybody she crossed paths with, whether she was serving tables at the local restaurant where she worked to make ends meet, or simply walking down the sunny streets of Prescott. Pam was outgoing and endlessly excited about life. As the oldest of 4 children, Pam loved nothing more than her family. Her father, Paul, considered her his trusty sidekick. She was an extraordinary mentor to her younger siblings, always ready with a kind word or a comforting hug. She was the kind of big sister who took her younger siblings under her wing, guiding them through the ups and downs of growing up. They could always count on her. She was a safe harbor where they could confide their deepest teenage secrets without fear of judgment, though she had many interests and hobbies. Pam was still trying to figure out her ultimate path in life. She was highly artistic, with a flair for creative that showed in her vibrant outfits and her beautifully crafted doodles. She often talked about going to beauty college, dreaming of perhaps venturing into fashion design. The world was a blank canvas, and Pam held a brightly colored brush, ready to paint her future. In the summer of 1988, ready to spread her wings and experience a bit of independence, Pam moved out of her family home. She found a cozy apartment with a new friend, Shelley Norgard. Shelley was 18 years old and, according to those who knew her, always a little bit awkward. While Pam was an open book, Shelley was a mystery. Nobody seemed to know much about her background or where she came from. Her parents were never in the picture, save for a strict father whom she preferred not to live with. For Shelley, living with the radiant Pam was finally a chance to experience the warmth of a family connection she had so desperately lacked. August of 1988 brought another spark of joy into Pam's life when she reconnected with an old flame, Bobby Kitchener. They took things slowly, enjoying the simple pleasures of each other's company. Pam was reinvigorated, and Bobby was thrilled, realizing he still harbored deep, affectionate feelings for her. Her life revolved around her friends, her loving family, and simply having a good time under the vast, starry Arizona sky. Chapter 2, The Disappearance and the Rumors. The crisp autumn air began to settle over Prescott in September. On the evening of September 16th, 1988, Pam was out on the town. She had spent the early part of the evening with Bobby in his car, parked near the courthouse square. It was a popular local pastime to hang out there, chatting with friends and watching people cruise by in their vintage cars. Bobby left for work around 9:30 in the evening. Kissing Pam goodbye, she cheerfully told him she was just going to head home and relax for the rest of the night. But the next day, a strange quiet fell over Pam's usual lively circles. Shelley called Paul, her voice hesitant, asking if he knew where Pam was. Paul said he did not. Shelley claimed Pam had taken off the night before and had not returned home. At first, Paul tried to remain calm, leaning on the optimistic belief that his adventurous daughter had simply lost track of time with friends. But when Monday rolled around and Pam failed to show up for her shift at the restaurant, a deep, protective worry set into his heart. Pam was responsible. She was simply not the kind of person to disappear without a word to anyone. Paul immediately contacted the Prescott Police Department to report his beloved daughter missing. The town rallied, their collective hearts going out to the Pitts family. The police officers, known for their dedication to their small community, launched a thorough investigation. As days turned into a week, and then almost 2, the mystery deepened. Paul learned from the authorities that Pam's car had been parked at her home the entire time. Her purse, her money, and all her personal belongings were still sitting exactly where she had left them. Paul found it incredibly odd that Shelley had failed to mention such a crucial detail when she first called him. A father's intuition told him something was terribly amiss. The investigation revealed that the dynamic between Pam and Shelley had grown complicated. The joyful independence of living together had soured over simple things, mostly financial strain regarding the rent. Pam had confided in her father that she was ready to move back into the comforting embrace of her family home. Paul had been overjoyed, welcoming the idea with open arms, knowing that Shelley had a reputation among the local youth for stretching the truth and spinning tall tales. On September 29th, 1988, the unthinkable happened. A target shooter in the Prescott National Forest, packing up his gear as the sun dipped below the horizon, stumbled upon a tragic discovery near a local hangout spot known affectionately, and sometimes notoriously, as Gordo's Pit. The Yavapai County Sheriff's Office responded swiftly. The scene was heartbreaking. Due to the ravages of nature and tragic circumstances, the authorities had to rely on dental records to confirm the heartbreaking truth. Pam had passed away. The news devastated the Pitts family. It was a mind-boggling, earth-shattering moment for Paul, who now had to navigate a world without his bright, artistic sidekick. But even in the depths of sorrow, the community wrapped their arms around the family, offering love, casseroles, and a shared determination to find answers. Chapter 3, The Whispers of Gordo's Pit. The investigation swung into full gear, driven by a dedicated team of local detectives who refused to let Pam's light be extinguished. Without justice, they started with the people closest to her. They sat down with Shelley, who spun a tangled web of a timeline. She claimed she had spent the evening picking up her boyfriend, Ray Clerks, visiting a fast food restaurant to meet friends, and driving around aimlessly until the early hours of the morning. The detectives, equipped with sharp minds and a healthy dose of small-town skepticism, cross-referenced her story. Bobby Kitchener was cleared quickly, his alibi solid and his grief genuine. Ray Clerks, Shelley's boyfriend, could not corroborate Shelley's late-night wandering, admitting he had no idea what she did after 11:30 that evening. As the detectives dug deeper, they encountered the quirky, sometimes absurd rumor mill of Prescott. The teenage grapevine was buzzing with wild, cinematic theories. Some kids whispered about secret cults operating in the woods. Others spun tales of dramatic, ritualistic gatherings. The detectives, seasoned professionals who preferred facts over fantasy, patiently listened to these dramatic tales, nodding politely before diligently chasing down actual leads. They knew that in a town where nothing major usually happened, imaginations tended to run wild. The cult rumors were quickly debunked, chalked up to the overactive imaginations of teenagers watching too many late-night horror movies. However, genuine clues did emerge from the chatter. Friends recalled Shelley acting strangely on the night of September 16th. She had been searching frantically for Pam, making dramatic claims that Pam was responsible for everything wrong in her life. It became clear that the roommate dynamic was not the happy picture Shelley had tried to paint. Furthermore, friends shared odd, unsettling comments Shelley had made in the past about how someone might hypothetically disappear, showing a strange fascination with dramatic exits. Months turned into a year. The detectives interviewed a young woman named Melinda Perry, chasing a lead about a supposed physical altercation at a party. Melinda stood her ground, adamantly denying any involvement, though she briefly faced charges for inconsistencies in her grand jury testimony. The authorities eventually realized she was just a frightened young woman caught up in the rumor. The charges were dropped, and Melinda moved away to seek a fresh, peaceful start in Nevada. Despite the tireless efforts of law enforcement, the trail grew cold. The scientific tools of the era were limited, and without concrete physical evidence, the detectives were forced to wait. But Paul Pitts never lost hope. He was a patient, loving father, willing to wait as long as it took for the truth to come to light. Chapter 4, A Second Disappearance. Time moved on, but the memory of Pam Pitts remained a vibrant thread in the fabric of Prescott. 3 years passed. Then, in late May of 1991, the town was shaken by another mysterious disappearance. College students exploring a rural area stumbled upon another tragic scene in an old, abandoned mine shaft. The Yavapai County Medical Examiner determined the identity of the young man to be Ray Clerks, the 24-year-old boyfriend of Shelley Norgard. Ray had been a responsible, ambitious young man who dreamed of becoming a commercial airline pilot. His family was extremely tight-knit, and they had reported him missing when he uncharacteristically failed to show up for a family wedding in California. The detectives immediately recognized a connection. This was the second person close to Shelley who had vanished and met a tragic end. Ray's family shared that Ray had been planning to move back to California to pursue his aviation dreams, and he had made it clear that he was not taking Shelley with him. The relationship was coming to an end. Armed with this undeniable pattern and a newfound determination, investigators obtained a search warrant for the home Shelley and Ray had shared. This time, the evidence was clear. A fingerprint found at the scene linked Shelley directly to the location. The tragic truth was undeniable, and on June 4th, 1991, Shelley was placed under arrest. During the legal proceedings, Shelley accepted a plea deal. She admitted that a heated argument over Ray leaving and taking their dogs had escalated into a tragic, fatal moment of panic and irreversible action. For her actions, she received a sentence of 20 years in the Arizona State Prison. For the Pitts family, the news brought a complex mix of emotions. While they felt relief that Shelley was no longer a danger to the community, they still longed for definitive answers about Pam. They suspected that Shelley's fear of Ray revealing her past secrets might have played a role in his demise, but without physical evidence linking her to Pam's case, the detectives' hands were tied. The years rolled on. 18 long years passed. The sting of loss softened into a deep, enduring love for the memory of the bright girl who had loved fashion and family. Paul's desire for answers transformed from a demand for swift retribution into a quiet, steadfast quest of the truth, driven purely by the love for his daughter. Chapter 5, The Phone Calls. In March of 2011, 23 years after Pam's bright smile was lost to the world, a specialized cold case team reopened the investigation. A new detective, Detective Dart, took the helm. He approached the towering files with fresh eyes and a relentless, optimistic spirit. When he read through the dusty pages and discovered Shelley's history with Ray Clerks, the pieces of the puzzle began to click together with resounding clarity. Shelley was due to be released from prison soon. Hoping to find the final piece of the puzzle, investigators decided to pay her a visit. They spoke to her for an hour, not with harsh interrogations, but simply to remind her that Pam had not been forgotten. The strategy was clever and gentle. They hoped the reminder would prompt her to speak about the past of her family over the prison. Telephones. The team diligently recorded and listened to 97 phone calls Shelley made between that interview and her release in May of 2011. At first, the calls yielded nothing. Shelley was released, found a job, got married, and began a new life under the name Shelley Norgard Harmon. The case hit another low as department moves and heavy caseloads demanded attention elsewhere. But Detective Dart was not one to give up on a good story or a deserving family. In the spring of 2017, 6 years after Shelley's release, he decided to personally review those 97 phone calls one more time. He sat in his quiet office, listening to hours of mundane chatter, until he struck gold. On one recording, Shelley was speaking to her father. Her father, clearly concerned about the detective's visit, asked if everything was all right. He expresses worry, noting that in over 20 years, Shelley had never actually told him what happened the night Pam went missing. He stated he was up in the air about the whole situation. On the tape, Shelley's response was a chilling, telling silence. For Detective Dart, that silence spoke volumes. It was the crucial piece of circumstantial evidence needed to finally take action. The hairs on his arm stood up as he realized that, at long last, they had what they needed to bring peace to the Pitts family. On June 2nd, 2017, investigators approached Shelley. With a calm, professional demeanor, they informed her that the past had finally caught up with her. She was arrested for the events that transpired in 1988. Chapter 6, Justice and Memories. The road to the courtroom was not without its hurdles. Preparing a case that was 30 years old meant dealing with faded memories and the simple passage of time. The prosecutors knew it was an uphill battle, a true testament to their dedication to the cause. They presented Paul with a difficult choice regarding a plea agreement, understanding that a trial might not yield the absolute truth and wanting to finally close this painful chapter. Paul supported the decision to accept a guilty plea. It was a compromise, but it was a step toward ultimate closure. On March 1st, 2021, nearly 4 years after her arrest, 50-year-old Shelley stood before a judge. She finally offered her version of the events of September 16th, 1988. She admitted to tracking Pam down, engaging in a heated argument that escalated into a physical fight, which ended in a tragic loss of life. While she withheld the intricate details of what happened afterward, the admission of guilt was officially recorded. Shelley was credited for the time she had already served in prison and the years she spent awaiting trial, allowing her to walk out of the courtroom. For Paul and his family, the outcome was not the cinematic justice one might see in movies, but it was a quiet, profound victory. They had secured a confession and a conviction. The truth, long buried under decades of rumors and silence, had finally been brought to the light. Paul found solace in knowing that the world now knew the truth about the woman who had taken two bright souls from their community. But more importantly, the conclusion of the legal journey allowed the families to fully embrace the joyous memories of the ones they loved. The legacy of this story was not one of darkness, but of the enduring power of love and the resilience of community. Ray Clerks was remembered fondly by his tight-knit family as an ambitious young man whose dreams of flying high in the sky reflected his boundless potential. And Pam Pitts, the girl with a dazzling smile and a heart of gold, remained a beacon of light for her father, her siblings, and everyone who had the privilege of knowing her. Paul wanted the world to remember Pam not for how her story ended, but for how she lived. A wonderful, artistic young lady who loved life, cherished her family, and could not wait to get out into the world and share her joy. Though her time was cut short, the warmth of her spirit continued to inspire her family, reminding them every day to embrace life with the same fiery, loving passion that Pam always had. The majestic expanse of the Prescott National Forest had always been a sanctuary for the residents of the small, vibrant town of Prescott, Arizona, with its towering ponderosa pines reaching toward the endless blue sky and the crisp, invigorating air that swept through the valleys. The forest provided endless recreational activities for everyone. Families would spend their weekends hiking the winding trails, while others rode their bicycles through the rugged terrain or practiced target shooting in the designated clearings during the warm daytime hours. It was a place of breathtaking beauty, a natural playground that fostered a deep sense of community and joy among the townsfolk. In the radiant summer of 1988, a young woman named Pamela Pitts embodied the very spirit of this lively town. At 19 years old, Pamela was a beacon of light to everyone fortunate enough to cross her path. She was known far and wide for her bright, infectious smile and an unparalleled zest for life. Pamela was a wonderful young woman, always eager to learn something new, always wanted to share a laugh, and possessing a rare, beautiful gift. She was the type of person who could make friends with absolutely anybody. Her outgoing nature and genuine excitement about the world around her made her a beloved figure in her community. As the oldest of 4 siblings, Pamela loved nothing more than her family. She shared a profound, unbreakable bond with her father, Paul. To him, she was not just a daughter, but a trusted psychic, a constant source of pride and joy. She was an extraordinary mentor to her younger siblings. Her younger sister often spoke of how Pamela was an amazing big sister who took her under her protective wing, gently guiding her through the early challenges of life. Pamela was always there, a steadfast pillar of support and a confidant who always knew how to offer the perfect word of encouragement. Like many young adults on the cusp of discovering their life path, Pamela had many interests and dreams. She was highly artistic and often talked enthusiastically about attending beauty college or pursuing a career in fashion design. By the time she turned 19, she felt a natural, adventurous urge to spread her wings and experience a newfound sense of independence. She decided to move in with a new friend, Shelley Norgard. Shelley was 18 years old, and to many, she seemed like a quiet, somewhat awkward young woman. Her background was a bit of a mystery, and it appeared she had faced struggles with abandonment and a challenging home life. For Shelley, living with a radiant and welcoming Pamela was a precious chance to finally experience a genuine connection and a sense of belonging. To support her dreams and her new independent lifestyle, Pamela eagerly took a job at a local restaurant. The work was demanding, but she handled it with her trademark grace and good humor, saving her earnings to make ends meet. That August, a month after moving into her new apartment, Pamela experienced a delightful twist of fate when she reconnected with a former sweetheart, Bobby Kitchener. Their reunion was tender and full of cautious optimism. They took things slowly, enjoying sweet conversations and peaceful evenings under the Arizona stars. Pamela felt reinvigorated by their renewed friendship, and Bobby was thrilled, harboring deep, enduring feelings for the remarkable young woman who brought so much light into his world. Pamela's life beautifully revolved around her loving family, her supportive friends, and the simple, profound joy of creating happy memories. However, the warm breeze of that summer eventually gave way to an unexpected autumn chill. On the 16th of September, 1988, the town of Prescott experienced a profound shift when Pamela suddenly vanished. When Shelley called Pamela's family to ask if they knew where she was, stating that Pamela had not come home the previous night, a wave of concern gently rippled through those who loved her. At first, her father Paul maintained a hopeful composure, trusting in his daughter's responsible nature. But when Pamela, who was known for her exceptional work ethic, missed her shift at the restaurant on Monday, his concern evolved into a deep, parental protective instinct. Pamela was simply not the kind of person to disappear without a word. Knowing in his heart that something was amiss, Paul reached out to the Prescott Police Department, initiating a search that would unite the community in a shared mission of hope and determination. 13 days later, on the evening of the 29th of September, the search reached a sorrowful conclusion. A local citizen, finishing up a peaceful evening of target shooting near an area known affectionately by locals as Gordo's Pit, made a startling discovery near one of the old fire pits. The Yavapai County Sheriff's Office, along with the Prescott Police Department, responded with remarkable swiftness and professionalism. Through careful, respectful examination and later consultation with dental records, they confirmed the heartbreaking truth that the beautiful, vibrant Pamela had passed away. The news was a profound shock to Pamela's devoted family and the entire town. It was a heartbreaking moment that defied simple explanation. Yet, even in the depths of their grief, the family's immense love for Pamela remained a guiding light. Paul found himself balancing the monumental weight of his loss with a quiet, resolute determination to understand what had happened to his cherished daughter. He was not alone. The dedicated investigators of the local police forces were equally committed to finding the truth. displaying a tireless dedication to justice that would span decades. The investigation was complex from the very beginning. The scientific testing available in 1988 lacked the incredible precision of modern genetic analysis. The dedicated officers meticulously combed through the forest, treating the natural landscape with the utmost respect as they searched for clues. The coroner determined that Pamela had passed away due to homicidal violence, though the exact circumstances remained shrouded in mystery. Driven by a noble desire to bring peace to Pamela's family, the investigators began the delicate process of interviewing those closest to her. Their first conversations were naturally with her immediate circle. Paul shared that he had recently learned Pamela and Shelley were experiencing some gentle friction regarding household finances. Pamela had even lovingly confided in her father that she was ready to return to the comforting embrace of her family home. Paul had welcomed this news with open arms, relieved that his daughter would soon be back under his roof. He had heard whispers around town that Shelley struggled with honesty, but he focused only on the joyful prospect of Pamela's return. When investigators gently spoke with Shelley on the 5th of October, she provided a timeline of her activities. On the evening of the 16th of September, she recounted picking up her boyfriend, Ray Clerks, visiting a local fast food restaurant, and watching a movie with friends. The detectives listened patiently, noting every detail. They also spoke with Bobby Kitchener, who shared fond memories of spending that evening downtown with Pamela, chatting happily with friends before he had to leave for work at 9:30. Bobby's timeline was quickly verified, allowing the investigators to focus their empathetic but thorough attention elsewhere. As the officers dug deeper, speaking with more individuals from the community, they uncovered conflicting narratives. Some friends mentioned that Shelley had been upset that evening, searching for Pamela and expressing feelings of frustration. The town of Prescott, usually so tranquil, became a swirl of rumors. Some young people whispered imaginative, outlandish stories about secret societies or ritualistic activities in the forest, fueled by the vivid imaginations of youth in the late 1980s. The seasoned investigators, grounded in logic and reason, carefully evaluated each rumor, expertly separating whispered fiction from factual reality. A year later, in the summer of 1989, the investigators pursued a lead involving another young woman named Melinda Perry, who had allegedly been involved in a disagreement with Pamela. The authorities dedicated immense time and resources to this avenue, guided by their unwavering commitment to uncovering the truth. Melinda was questioned and even brought before a grand jury, but ultimately it became clear that her path had not crossed Pamela's in any tragic way that fateful night. The charges against her were gracefully dropped, and the investigation gently transitioned into a dormant phase, waiting patiently for a new spark of information. The passage of time is often a quiet healer, but it can also be a silent keeper of secrets. 3 years passed. Then, in the bright spring month of May, 1991, the tranquil setting of the Prescott area yielded another profound mystery. Students exploring a historic cave system and its vertical shafts discovered a young man who had sadly passed away. The Yavapai County medical examiner, working with deep respect and precision, identified the young man as Ray Clerks, the 24-year-old boyfriend of Shelley Norgard. Ray was a young man with a heart full of ambition and eyes firmly fixed on the sky. He possessed a brilliant potential and harbored a lifelong dream of becoming a commercial airline pilot, an aspiration deeply rooted in his close-knit, loving family. He was a highly responsible individual, so when he missed a family wedding in California, his loved ones instantly knew something was wrong. His sudden absence was deeply felt a testament to the strong, loving bonds he shared with his relatives. The dedicated detectives, whose minds were sharp and memories long, immediately recognized the tragic connection. Two individuals, both closely tied to Shelley Norgard, had now been lost to the community under deeply saddening circumstances. Guided by their unwavering moral compass and a duty to protect the public, the investigators approached this new chapter with renewed vigor. When they visited the home Shelley and Ray had shared, armed with a lawful search warrant, they uncovered undeniable evidence in Shelley's vehicle that linked her directly to Ray's passing. In June of 1991, Shelley was peacefully taken into custody. The judicial process unfolded with careful deliberation, and by 1993, Shelley accepted a plea agreement, acknowledging her role in the tragic loss of Ray Clerks. She spoke of a heartbreaking moment of panic following a deeply emotional conversation under the stars, a profound mistake that forever altered the course of several lives. She was sentenced to 20 years in the state prison, a measure of justice that provided Ray's family with a starting point for their healing journey. For the family of Pamela Pitts, this development brought a complex mixture of relief and renewed patience. They recognized that while justice had been served for Ray, the truth regarding their beloved Pamela still patiently awaited the right moment to emerge. The investigators, though constrained by the technological limits of the time and a lack of direct evidence, never allowed Pamela's memory to fade from their hearts. They held on to the case files with a quiet, enduring promise. 18 years flowed by like the gentle streams of a national forest. The pain of loss slowly transformed from a sharp ache into a deep, enduring love for the memories of those who were gone. Paul Pitts no longer harbored feelings of anger or desire for simple revenge. His heart was focused entirely on achieving a peaceful, honorable justice for his daughter. In March of 2011, 23 years after Pamela's bright light had left the town, a specialized team of cold case investigators reopened the files. A brilliant and dedicated detective, newly assigned to the case, approached the voluminous records with fresh eyes and an open mind. When he realized a profound connection between the two cases, a renewed sense of purpose ignited within the department. They knew that Shelley was approaching the end of her sentence for Ray's case. With brilliant foresight, the investigators reached out to her. Initiating a polite conversation meant only to remind her that Pamela was never forgotten. Following this gentle reminder, the diligent officers monitored 97 phone calls Shelley made during her final months in the facility. At first, the countless hours of listening yielded only mundane details of daily life. Shelley was soon released in May of 2011, securing employment, finding a new relationship, and starting a quiet life under the name Shelley Norgar Harmon. The pursuit of justice requires unimaginable patience, and the investigators possessed it in abundance. 6 more years gracefully passed. In the spring of 2017, the lead detective, driven by an inspiring dedication to Pamela's memory, decided to personally review those 97 phone calls once more. His incredible perseverance was finally rewarded. Hidden within a conversation between Shelley and her father was a subtle but profound exchange, a moment of vulnerability where the truth quietly slipped through the cracks of a long-guarded secret. It was a monumental breakthrough, a testament to the idea that truth, no matter how deeply buried, always seeks the light. On the 2nd of June, 2017, armed with new understanding and an unyielding commitment to the Pitts family, investigators approached Shelley. The interaction was calm and professional. When she was officially informed of her arrest for the incident from 1988, it marked the beginning of the final chapter of a nearly 30-year journey. The most beautiful moment of this long endeavor occurred when the detective had the profound honor of meeting with Paul Pitts to deliver the news. The pure, overwhelming relief and gratitude that filled the room was a powerful reminder of why these devoted officers do what they do. Handshakes and heartfelt embraces were shared. Tears of quiet joy were shed, and the heavy burden of uncertainty was finally lifted from a father's weary but loving shoulders. The path forward was not without its legal complexities. A case spanning 3 decades presents unique challenges, as memories naturally soften and evidence ages. The prosecutors, acting with wisdom and deep compassion, consulted closely with Pamela's family. Together, they navigated the delicate balance of the judicial system, ultimately deciding that securing a definitive resolution was the most healing path forward. On the 1st of March, 2021, the culmination of 33 years of hope, patience, and tireless effort finally arrived in the courtroom. Shelley provided a statement acknowledging a tragic confrontation that escalated far beyond reason, resulting in the heartbreaking loss of Pamela. While her words may not have captured the entirety of the family's beliefs, the admission itself was a monumental victory for truth, taking into account the extensive time she had already served in the correctional system. The court facilitated a resolution that brought the legal proceedings to a quiet, definitive close. Though the legal journey had ended, the true legacy of this story does not reside in the courtroom or the confines of a prison. It lives brilliantly in the enduring, beautiful memories of Pamela Pitts and Ray Clerks. It lives in the incredible resilience of a father who never stopped hoping, and in the inspiring dedication of public servants who refuse to let a young woman be forgotten. Ray is remembered fondly for his boundless potential and his eyes that always looked upward, dreaming a fly among the clouds. He represented the ambition and the tight-knit love of a family that continues to honor his spirit every day. And Pamela is celebrated as the radiant fireball she truly was. She is remembered not for the tragic circumstances of her passing, but for the profound joy she brought into the world during her 19 years. She was a young woman who loved life entirely, who uplifted her siblings, who brought smiles to strangers, and whose infectious laughter still echoes in the whispering pines of the Prescott National Forest. Through the tireless efforts of her community and the unwavering love of her family, Pamela's bright light was never truly extinguished. It simply transformed into a guiding beacon of hope, resilience, and the enduring power of love. The Prescott National Forest stretched out like a vast, endless sea of emerald green, offering the cheerful residents of Prescott, Arizona, boundless opportunities for joyful recreation. It was a haven of natural beauty, a place filled with the echoes of shared laughter and sunny afternoons. Families and friends often gathered there to ride their dirt bikes along the winding, dusty trails or to practice target shooting under the brilliant, open sky. The forest was a symbol of the town itself, welcoming, vibrant, and deeply connected to the simple joys of life. In this warm and close-knit community lived a remarkable young woman named Pamela Pitts, known affectionately to everyone simply as Pam. She was 19 years old and possessed a bright smile that could easily outshine the golden Arizona sun. Pam was a wonderful spirit, a true beacon of light in her family and her town. She was always seeking out new adventures, always eager to create fun and memorable moments with those around her. She had a rare, magical gift. She was the type of person who could make friends with absolutely anybody. Her outgoing nature and boundless excitement for life drew people to her like a magnet. As the oldest of 4 children, Pam cherished nothing more in the world than her family. To her father, Paul, she was much more than a daughter. She was his loyal sidekick, his source of endless pride. She was an extraordinary older sister, taking her younger siblings under her caring wings, acting as an inspiring mentor and a steadfast guide through the ups and downs of growing up. Her siblings knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that Pam would always be there for them. They could confide in her, lean on her, and trust her implicitly. By the time she reached the age of 19, Pam felt a natural, gentle pull to explore the world on her own terms. She was ready to leave the familial nest and embark on a new chapter of independence. She decided to move into an apartment with a new friend she had met through mutual acquaintances, a young woman named Shelley Norgard. Shelley was 18 years old and, in many ways, quite different from the effervescent Pam. Shelley was often described as slightly awkward, a quiet presence whose background remained somewhat of a puzzle to those around her. Her parents were rarely mentioned and seemed absent from the picture. leaving Shelley to navigate the world mostly on her own. For Shelley, the opportunity to live with Pam was a beautiful chance to experience the warmth of a true family connection. Shelley had faced challenges in her early years, dealing with the emotional weight of her parents dissolving their marriage. Her mother had moved on, and the relationship with her father, who was known to be quite a strict and stern taskmaster, was heavily strained. Shelley had made it abundantly clear that she deeply wished to avoid returning to her father's strict household. Living with Pam offered her a safe harbor. During the sunny summer of 1988, shortly after moving into their shared apartment, Pam secured a cheerful job at a popular local restaurant to help make ends meet. While she worked hard to support herself, she was still happily dreaming about her future. Pam was incredibly artistic and possessed a wonderful eye for beauty and design. She frequently shared her dreams of attending beauty college, or perhaps venturing into the exciting world of fashion design. The possibilities stretching out before her were endless and bright. In August of 1988, about a month after settling into her new home, Pam experienced a delightful rekindling of romance. She reconnected with a former sweetheart, Bobby Kitchener. Their reunion was sweet and cautious. They took their time, enjoying the gentle pace of a renewed connection. Bobby was absolutely thrilled. He found himself reinvigorated by her presence, harboring deep, enduring feeling for the lively young woman. Pam's days were a beautiful tapestry woven with the love of her family, the laughter of her friends, and the quiet joy of a blossoming romance. However, the peaceful rhythm of their lives experienced an unexpected pause. On the 16th of September, 1988, the town noticed the sudden absence of their favorite bright spirit. Pam had gone missing. The initial signs were confusing, but not immediately alarming. Shelley reached out to Paul, gently asking if he had seen his daughter. She mentioned that Pam had not returned home the previous night. At first, Paul maintained his usual calm demeanor, assuming his spirited daughter was simply caught up in an adventure. But as the weekend passed and Monday arrived with Pam failing to appear for her shift at the restaurant, a deep, profound sense of paternal concern took root in his heart. Pam was simply not the kind of person to walk away without a word. She loved her people too much for that. Trusting his instincts, Paul contacted the Prescott Police Department. The dedicated officers of the town immediately began to look into the disappearance, treating Pam as a missing person. For 13 days, the community held its breath, keeping hope alive, sharing fond memories, and looking for any sign of their beloved friend. On the evening of September 29, 1988, the story took a solemn